Just over 1 week ago, bombshell allegations of potential leadership election fraud via delegate manipulation at an annual general meeting were aimed at the Conservative Party of British Columbia, its senior staff, and its leader, John Rustad. The allegations were made during a press conference in the legislature by 3 of the party's former caucus members who now serve as independents. So, are these MLAs scorned and sore losers hell-bent on bringing their former party down? Or are the real ones losing out? British Columbians who donate, vote for, and trust the BC Conservatives to represent them democratically when in reality the party would rather orchestrate allegiance than earn it through trust and merit. I'm Drea Humphrey with Rebel News, and to help you get to the bottom of that question, I'll be bringing you leaked internal messages, whistleblower interviews, and more in a series of reports probing into these serious claims. You can support and share my investigation as it unfolds at bcelectionintegrity.com. And for now, in part 1, let's unpack the Indo-packing allegations, shall we?
Shortly after the party's AGM on March 1st, a senior member of John Rustad's executive team made the following confessions to me. This individual stated that over 100 South Asian men were sent by bus and ferry by the party for the specific purpose of voting for John's slate of directors and a new constitution. I was advised that the Conservative Party of BC paid approximately $100,000 to get these individuals to and from the AGM and on other measures to rig this election. The assertions include that John Rustad and all other senior staff were aware and complicit.
Whew! That was Kelowna Lake Country Coldstream MLA Tara Armstrong making a bold claim about her former party, a party run by donations from everyday people, allegedly spending $100,000 to incentivize South Asians to vote a certain way during its AGM, which took place at the beginning of March. Armstrong's independent colleagues, Peace River North's MLA Jordan Keeley and Vancouver Quilchena MLA Dallas Brody, who stood right beside her, and 2 other witnesses, gave statements supporting those claims. In fact, Brody even gave the allegations a name.
In a meeting with John Rustad, myself, and several MLAs late last year, I remember John talking about the party doing something he called Indo-packing. I had never heard of this term before and didn't understand it at the time. I now believe that this is what John had meant, that he would have the party pay for Indo-Canadians to attend the AGM and vote the way he asked them to vote.
Now, on the surface, Indo-packing, if meant to reduce barriers for individuals to participate in an AGM, technically isn't illegal, if permitted within the party's own constitution. But if these allegations hold water, surely incentivizing people to show up at a political meeting will leave a sour taste in the mouths of party members, especially those who paid the whopping $300 for their ticket or hundreds more to ferry and have gas and hotel rooms to attend and be a voting delegate at the AGM. And for now, to be sitting there wondering whether or not those same fees and expenses were weighed for others based on race? Sounds like a tactic you'd expect from the race-baiting gaslighters within the Liberals and the NDP. But even worse, and downright voting fraud, would be if those who were Indo-packed received incentives in exchange for voting a specific way, in particular voting for the current leadership's preferred amendments to the Constitution or the party leader's endorsed slate of candidates branded as Team Rustad. And guess what? As seen right here in bold, that entire slate was who ended up being elected. So was any of Team Rustad's win attributed to Indo-packing? Who better to ask than Rustad himself?
There are so many very important issues that we need to be talking about. Bill 14, Bill 15, Bill 7. The party followed all the appropriate rules in terms of the AGM. I have no idea why they want to go on to this, but clearly they don't have the interest of British Columbians in mind.
Dallas Brody even said that she spoke to you one time and you talked about what she termed Indo-packing. Do you recall that conversation?
What I do recall in speaking with Dallas Brody at one time when she came in and she had some concerns is she first of all, in a private meeting we had, demanded to be kicked out of caucus, and then she settled down and she said, I don't know why I'm here, I should just quit. We've had many conversations between Dallas Brody and I, but I can tell you what we are concerned about is really valid issues for the people in British Columbia. Bill 14, Bill 15, Bill 7, these are overreaches of democracy. These is, front, from my perspective, to the legislature, the process of British Columbia. That's what we're focused on. That's what we're fighting. We're fighting for the people in British Columbia.
Okay, folks.
What did you make of that response? Did you hear a straight answer to whether or not the party spent $100,000 to Indo-pack their own AGM ahead of the vote? Me either. That's why I also followed up directly with the party, sending an email asking the same questions pretty much. And again, rather than confirm or deny, the party doubled down, shifting blame to the 3 independent MLAs who raised the concerns, essentially calling them lazy, distractors from what really matters. But note, they do not call them liars. And doesn't integrity within leadership races matter too? A series of leaked text messages I've obtained from verified sources prove that doubts about the Conservative Party of BC's AGM don't just come from the party's critics, but also from within currently sitting Conservative MLAs and their caucus, who in the immediate days following the AGM expressed a distrust in the party's leadership. The MLA's names and some other details are redacted to protect whistleblower sources. You see here a photo of a group of approximately 40 South Asian people standing in the back corner of the main AGM room. They're not sitting at a table like most others. Below the picture, you see concerns about the so-called packing, before you and I even heard that phrase being used in the legislature. And in response, a Conservative MLA says this was disappointing to say the least. They came, they voted, and they left. But this second Conservative MLA conversation offers even more insight on what some of that might all mean. The same picture is circulated with the texter calling the situation a clown show that needs to be fixed. And an MLA responds by admitting to not having all of the details and to still be gathering information, but then raises some concerns about the actual outcome of the leadership race itself. In particular, the electing of Team Rustad's slate, and a distrust that the regular standard of riding associations only being able to having 10 delegates become delegates to vote being upheld. The MLA claims that one of the people elected from the slate never even showed up or did a speech. They didn't campaign and essentially endorsed someone else for that position, yet were somehow listed as part of Team Rustad's candidate slate being endorsed and then elected to be on the board. And when Texter 1 claims to have heard that most of the bussed-in guys didn't have addresses that matched their registration at the front desk, the MLA says that is bullcrap. They also say that a bigwig in their riding who was not a delegate and was actually a delegate for another riding was there. And in this part of the exchange, that MLA suggests that they took delegate spots from each riding to get in who they wanted. The two also mention that both have heard that 2 of the party's senior staff received a whopping $177,000 bonus. The problem is our MLAs don't have the political knowledge like these others, the MLA says. I assume speaking about some of the newer faces elected into BC politics in our last election. The MLA believes that there are MLAs within the party that do have the integrity to stand up and do what's right, but they need options other than leaving the party. It sounds to me like this MLA is saying that people like themselves need different options to take a stand as an elected official, other than the path the three independent MLAs, who say they left the party basically because they had no moral choice but to do so. I am hoping something can be done without bringing bad press to the party, but if there are no other options, we cannot sit by, the MLA continues. Now, I'm not bad press, but I am the people's press. And while I would so much rather be reporting on alleged corruption and voting fraud occurring within the BC NDP instead, as I've already done extensively with our last provincial election, I too can find no moral reason or journalistic reason to give the BC Conservative Party, that I've personally rooted for in the past, a break. When it comes to matters of public interest, this is one of them. If the Conservatives Indo-packed the AGM at the cost of their donors, I think this is important. You let me know in the comments if you agree. And the Conservative Party of BC, well, I've reached out to them many times now for follow-ups as I've gotten more and more information corroborating what the three independents have saying, and they've completely ghosted me. Now, this next information is pretty damning. It's a leaked conversation from a Vesna Surtick. She's the Director of Advocacy and Government Relations Alberta for Santis Health and was a lead fundraiser and organizer for the BC Conservative during the time of the AGM. Surtick appears to not just be confirming the Indo-packing claim, she also gives advice on how one can best uncover this hidden truth by approaching Conservative MLA and party liaison Pete Davis. It reads, "Evidence is hard without losing some of your intel on the inside, but there are questions you can ask that can lead them to assume you have evidence, like number 1. Would like to see the revenue generated from ticket sales at the AGM. I think that is a non-aggressive approach that more than your group would be interested in receiving. It's non-accusatory and disruptive and a simple exploratory question to ask in caucus. This is a question you would ask Pete Davis at Party Caucus Liaison. But here's the kicker," Surtick says. "They waived costs for all the brown guys, so this will force them to prove that. You guys are right on this. A simple shift in communications will bring more of your caucus on board. Outsmarting these guys is way easier than it seems." The statement corroborates with what MLA Tara Armstrong stated a senior staff member had told her during the conference.
I was advised that the Conservative Party of BC paid approximately $100,000 to get these individuals to and from the AGM and on other measures to rig this election.
Now, clearly, on one level or another, Surtick wanted to get the truth out. But how did she respond when I reached out to her for comment? First, she downplayed my inquiry, giving the impression she wasn't even sure about any Indo-packing allegations and what it had to do with her. After I shared my report on the conference that took place with her to, jog her memory, she resorted to downplaying her role in the event, stating, yes, I saw this. My role with the AGM was a lot of the event coordination, making sure we had enough food, organizing, reception, etc. Sorry I can't be more helpful. Good luck with your story." Well, she certainly was helpful when it came to giving advice about the brown guys whose fees had been comped. So she had some sort of knowledge. So I said, to be clear, you didn't see or learn anything that would give you the reason to believe that the delegate fees for a significant number of South Asians were waived? I saw no proof or evidence of fees being waived for South Asians, she carefully replied. To help cure her sudden case of amnesia, I quoted her directly to herself, stating, "This is a question you would ask Pete Davis as party caucus liaison. They waived the costs for all the brown guys, so this will force them to prove that." These words are attributed to you, I said. Would you like to conclude with the same response you've provided, or would you like to add anything else? Surdic suddenly changed her tune and said she would give me a response in the morning. But after a short time passed, she messaged me again to claim that she stood by her denial to know anything and claimed that the quote I read to her, which you saw in more context, was taken out of context. She claimed she'd speak with me on a call in the morning, but much like the Conservative Party of BC and their leader, poof, I was ghosted when I tried to reach her, and so were you, the public. If the text was taken out of context and you knew I'd be publishing those words, why wouldn't you speak with me to clarify what the context really was? And if you didn't Indo-pack your party's AGM, or you did so because you had a really good and democratic reason to do so, why wouldn't you respond to my inquiries to let me know? You should know that I have sent out other inquiries to a ton of people I believe have more information regarding this, or at least more opinions on it, including almost every MLA within that party and many staffers. And while most stayed silent, not all were afraid to go on record. Salmon Arm Shoe Swap MLA David Williams was quick to at least respond, giving the impression he had nothing to hide and letting me know he's open to providing comment on his opinion of the allegations, but was traveling at the moment and that I could reach out to him again if I needed more info. I received a couple of cryptic anonymous emails with some tips for me to dig into shortly after putting out my inquiries, and while I can't say for certain those tips came from within the party, they certainly smell like they did. But there was another BC Conservative MLA who, like David Williams, wasn't afraid to talk, and that was Langley Abbotsford MLA Harman Bangu. Langley Abbotsford MLA Harman Bangu.
Yeah, well, I understand. Like when you look around at that AGM, how many people, when people say Indo-packing, I looked around at that room of 600 and there was maybe 80 Indo total. You were there yourself, right, Dre? Like you look around, it wasn't like a mass overwhelming. And one thing else, like what happens with a lot of AGMs is people that are coming from regions, they tend to travel together. And a lot of AGM boards, riding association boards, you look at the federal side of the Conservatives, they were paying for a lot of the board members. They were raising the money within, and they were going out in the community saying, hey, we want to have our people represented at the AGM. Would you mind chipping in and donating? And a lot of boards actually took that mechanism and did that to help their members on their board go to the AGM. A lot of parties do this. And that's one thing where I feel there was a little bit of not a lot of knowledge out there of how this all works. And that's what I want to kind of clarify on that. And it wasn't an overwhelming amount of Indo people. I'm Indo myself, and I've been very outspoken about this stuff. This is kind of was the reason in the beginning I got involved in politics was to bring the more Canada first aspect of it, to get MLAs to actually voice situations they have in their communities freely.
Yes, I definitely was there, and I agree ratio wise, it wasn't an overwhelming number. There was,
Hmm.
a significant, I think 80 is pretty accurate. It could have been a little bit more, it could have been a little bit less. One thing I did notice, though, that was peculiar is when you look at the list of who did, according to the BC Conservatives, who did go ahead and buy, spent the $300 to go ahead and be delegates and be able to vote. There really isn't a lot of South Asian last names. And you would think that with that group, there would have been more than the approximate 12 that are on that list. Does that stand out at all as peculiar to you?
In ways, but like then again, who knows? Maybe they were helping out in their communities fundraising
Mhm.
to get them there. So they were there and was going to be covered. That's what I don't,
Right.
it's up to individual riding associations and areas to do that. Probably the names you saw in there were from probably on my area. I had a few people from my area, but a
Yeah.
very, very vast blend of people that I had there because my riding's very diverse in that way. Right. So yeah, I don't think that was like the biggest concern. I understand when everyone shows up, but I mind you when it was 2023, the last AGM when we had, and when we were all there was a big group of 30, 40 people that came in from the north. And then again, we were like, oh, well, I guess this is, I said, a lot of people had concerns. I'm like, no, they're probably travel together. It makes sense for them to carpool or whatever way, hop on a ferry and get to the island. That's just how things work out in a lot of parties.
That's Bangu's perspective on the alleged Indo-packing as an MLA who attended the AGM, as opposed to someone who ran it. Perhaps the group of South Asians showed up late, they were bussed in, and it was simply because they were working hard as volunteers and simply getting compensated for such, even though it's clear they certainly were not volunteering at that actual event. You heard me mention to Bangu the lack of South Asian surnames on the list of hundreds of delegates and members who actually paid to be at the AGM, and how, despite the approximate 100 South Asians we saw come late, there were barely any South Asian names on the list. And since the BC Conservatives won't simply tell me how many volunteers worked the event, here is what I see when I look at the tickets they sold. Approximately 490 paid for tickets, delegate tickets, out of a total of 632-ish delegates. And a few of those tickets technically could be members who didn't vote for whatever reason. And out of all of those names, that long list, approximately only 12 have traditional South Asian surnames. This leaves approximately 142 unpaid for delegates, which is too high of a number to have been the amount of volunteers actually helping with that particular event, at least on the day of it. But 40, 50, that seems plausible, making the claim of approximately 100 delegates who were Indo-packed into the event expense-free more plausible. But surely, if these were truly delegates who registered like everybody else in the appropriate time, which, by the way, wasn't up until the day of, if they did that fairly, like everyone else, but for some reason had their expenses covered by the party by donations from the public, surely their names would have been on the actual list of delegates when you go into the door and you get your name tag and you get your yes or no voting cards, right? To get to the bottom of that, I interviewed two whistleblower volunteers, beginning with Russ Morgan.
Well, I didn't see any bus, but a large group of people came in, after we had got through the first rush of people, and we registered them and gave them their badges and their vote signs, if they were registered as delegates.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we spoke off camera. You are aware of sort of the rumors circulating, and you think you know the group that they pertain to. What was your experience with them compared to everybody else that came in? Was there anything that drastically stood out as far as, yes, you're a delegate, and no, you are not, go to help desk?
Well, there was probably more people that weren't on my list that I had to send them to the help desk.
And what do you think? I mean, you don't know, but do you have any guesses of why that would be?
I don't have a clue. Like, lots of people would, register the night before, maybe past the deadline, that kind of thing. I'm not sure. I'm not going to speculate on it.
And did you experience that? And I think you've already answered this with other individuals aside from who arrived late.
There was lots of people that showed up, and I wasn't able to help them, because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have them on my list, right? So I would send them on to the next part of the process. There was quite a few like that.
Okay, and did you, when you heard people say, "Hey, I just signed up last night," was it only people that had come late and around the same time, or was it just throughout the whole day?
Well, it was, there was variations of it. There was throughout the whole day for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the people that came in kind of late, um, they there was probably like 9 out of 10 or whatever. I didn't have their name on my list, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I can't really speculate on why, but
9 out of 10? Are you kidding me? As in 90%. The group of South Asians who showed up late to vote and run were not on the pre-printed list of delegates and had to go around a corner to a help desk? AGM volunteer Scott Geiler had a similar experience.
I'm Scott Geiler, and I was a scrutineer for Gwen O'Mahony at the BC Con AGM. While I was a scrutineer, I noticed a large influx of Indo-Canadian men from about 1:45 to 2:30 p.m. The room became so packed, it became very difficult to manage and guide people through the room. At one point, we had to break down the registration table that was reserved for S surnames into two different tables because there were so many people with Indo-Canadian last names like Singh. And it was almost assured that if we got someone with an Indian last name, we were putting them to the help desk. And I was unable to scrutinize what happened at the help desk. I just know we sent people there, and they came back, and then they were magically allowed to vote.
So there you have it. That was part one of my investigation, and I want to know what you think about it in the comments now that we've unpacked the Indo-packing allegations. In part two at bcelectionintegrity.com, I will probe deeper into claims that behind closed doors, the party worked overtime to try and sideline grassroots members with dissenting views to not be able to become delegates and vote at the AGM. Drea Humphrey for Rebel News. If you appreciate that I investigate government overreach and corruption allegations on any party that affects British Columbia and more, please go to our special website called bcelectionintegrity.com and donate what you can to keep our reports going strong.